My name's Clarke. I work for Mastenbroek Limited. We manufacture the drainage machines. We're also a Trimble authorised representative for the water management products that they have. So today we're actually going to start talking about land forming. Most people know water management in the UK as traditional subsurface drainage, like what Tim has just been talking about. So we've put up a bit of a slide here. What we're actually going to talk about, I'll talk about a little bit about land forming, the issues that we get on site and some of the benefits of it, and also a little bit of how we actually achieve some land forming and what we do through the survey, design and install. We're then going to introduce a contractor that's Myles from AMS Contractors down in Chichester. They're actually using this technology on the machinery that they have, and part of they're going to do is talk about a couple of the case studies that they've actually done on some fields and why they've done it, how they've done it, and the benefits of actually doing it. And then we'll have a short Q&A afterwards. So why do we land form? I don't know if you can see the screen. Many people on many farms that you go to, that you look around, will have a similar picture to this at any stage during the crop cycle. So there will be damaged parts of the field that have been ponded, that have been flooded, creating all sorts of havoc, from severe cases like what you see here through to reduced yield in certain areas. Something that is starting to be considered in more recent times is the surface runoff and the soil erosions that coming along with the fields. We've all seen pictures in the news of your brown slurries running down all the rural roads. If we can actually start to look at controlling what some of the slopes are in our field and how much water runs off and the speed that water runs off, we can actually start to reduce some of the erosion that we get through there. So it's not only the soils that's disappearing, a lot of the time it's actually your nutrients that you've got in that field disappearing with that surface water runoff as well. Also, one of the areas that we can target, which Myles will touch on in one of the case samples later, is actually the historics from farming operations. So if you've got beds being formed into a certain orientation in the field, you might not see it, but actually your field will have a topographic map that shows those bed forms. Myles has got a couple of slides later where he'll show you the differences before and after some of this, and it's obviously there. Ditch cleanings. So a lot of the time people will clean the ditch. Tim was talking about the maintenance that's done. How often is that material actually distributed back into the field? How often is it left within 5 to 10 metres of the headland? People come then to drainage contracts and say, I have a compaction problem, I have an issue in my headland. Actually, is it a compaction problem, or can that water not simply just get off that field? These are some of the considerations that we can do. So what can land forming do for us? We can obviously look to reduce or eliminate the ponding effects that we have on the field. That's the obvious question that people have. We can do that by cutting material from one place and filling it into another. We can look at the way water is distributed around that actual field that's there. We can control that water flow. We can vary the grade. So by grade we mean the slope. So you can move that around a field. Traditionally people think of land forming as land levelling, so you put a single slope across the field. Now with the modern GPS technologies in there, we can actually grade a field using the topography that's there and actually only put material where we need it to be. So this has a massive effect on helping to improve the water infiltration, helping to improve the soil erosion, and helping to remove some of the physical features that you have within those fields. So if you historically had lettuce beds or carrot beds in a field, to actually help remove those. So what can be done? This is a good question. So extensively used outside of the UK is techniques called land forming. I've seen it in Australasia, I've seen it in North America, I've seen it in South America, I've seen it in Southern Europe, all the places that I get to travel around with my day job working with the drainage machines. So you get to see this technology moving around. So So the idea of this is we can modify the surface of that agricultural field and actually help to reduce your surface runoffs, reduce your ponding, increase your efficiencies, increase your irrigation abilities, fundamentally increase your yield. But yield is not the one and only factor that you need to consider with this. So the last slide I'm going to put up is what would we do and how would we do it. So as I alluded to earlier, we can land level your field. That's not a problem. We can make it a billiard slope if you really want us to. Depends on your budget, your soil depths and the materials we've got available to us. But ideally we want to look to optimise the design for the field that we've got there. So it'll start with a survey, whether that's a quad bike, whether that's the actual scraper itself that's coming into the field, so we can generate a digital model of that field. So we can look to optimise it for what's called a drainage optimisation. So with a drainage optimisation, what it means is there are no physical areas on that field where we can pond and collect water. No matter where you go on that field, there is a surface water route for that water to go to the ditch to move away from the field. We can limit our topsoil cuts. This is the fundamental question we get asked every time in the UK. I've got no topsoil, how can I do this? The top right hand picture that looks pretty much a green blob, that is a field that Myles is going to talk about. So anywhere that's within that green sector, we are moving less than 5 centimetres, 50 millimetres, 2 inches, no matter what money you're talking to, of soil that we have. So that is fixing issues that you have by moving less than 2 inches of soil. You move more than that ploughing or with a cultivator. We can look at different designs, so we can go level, we can drain, we can actually look at irrigation. So if you know you're going to irrigate in a field, not so much going to be done in the UK, I don't think, but we can actually look to optimise that field for irrigation ways as well. It generates a cut and fill map. So the bottom right hand corner is the same field as the top. So the right hand corner is a cut fill map for the same field. The only difference is we've told it there to put a best fit level. So you can see that goes to a maximum of 350 millimetres cut as opposed to 170 millimetres cut in the top. But fundamentally we're moving over 4,500 cubic metres of soil to achieve that, whereas at the top it's 377. So there's lots of different things that we can do to actually look to optimise and hopefully come up with a scheme that is beneficial and also within the budget of the grower there. So that is a very, very quick whistle-stop tour through what we've seen. I could do a full presentation on those few slides quite happily, but I would like to hand over to Myles, where he's actually going to look at a couple of case studies for farms that actually have been done and fields that have actually been done with Myles through his contracting business.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that, Fred. Yeah, Myles Strange, Managing Director of AMS. We're based in Chichester, West Sussex. I'm just going to talk through a couple of case studies that and some projects that we've carried out in the past for local farmers. This is a case study in Siddlesham, not too far from us, 3 hectare field. Farmer came to us, they'd recently bought it actually. They wanted to use it, they weren't quite sure what for, but they found that it was very waterlogged, pretty much useless for cereal root crops. They also had a beef herd which they were unable to graze on just because it was so wet. So we went in, took a topo of the field, had a look at what was going on. Touching back on what Fred was talking about, we were there to remove the ponding areas and improve the infiltration rate across that field. Once the work was carried out, you can see from the first image in 2015, that's what the field looked like historically. You can see in the top corner, uneven growth, in the middle, barely any growth. In 2019, we carried out the work. As you can see there, and in 2022 they planted it just in a grass lay to be able to graze their beef herd. Yeah, as you can see there, it's much more even, much less ponding areas. We could have probably done a few more days on it, but budget constraints. For what he wanted to use the field for, he was happy with where we were there. We also talked about potentially putting land drainage in it if it was required, but at this moment, for what he's trying to do with the field, yeah, he was quite happy with the outcome of what we did. That took 2 days, so to do a topo, probably a morning in the office doing a design, and then 2 days with a tractor and a scraper. So relatively quick process. The farmer just subsoiled the field before we got there to remove any compaction. That just helps with the cut and fill with the scraper. This is another farmer up the road from us. G's rent this land from Langmeads. They're predominantly salad producers. They came to us. They had problems with headland ponding, especially when they were irrigating. Unevenness of crop was a factor, and also they wanted to improve their planting efficiency at the start of the runs. They were finding they were getting a lot of misplanting from entering into the beds that were unlevel. They were also finding that low-lying areas were producing low yields, anaerobic soil, and in these areas there was a lot more disease than in the rest of the beds. The image, I think I'll go to the next one. The image on the left, the top left, is a cut and fill. So as you can see from the low areas, they correspond with if I can go back, the bed formation in the bottom photo. So the client harvested the crop, double subsoiled. To the eye, it looked like it was just a cultivated field. We then took a topo, and it was quite interesting to see the bed formation still showing in the topo, which would be carried on subsequently into the next crop. This field was about 18 acres, 7.5 hectares. To complete this design, it was only about 377 cube of soil to be moved across that whole site, so that worked out about 50 cube a hectare, so really not very much. As Fred mentioned earlier, most of the site was below 60 mil of cut and fill, so we're not depleting topsoil in any areas. We're actually using the whole field as a pool of soil as such to fill the real low areas and the concerning areas. Usually what we find is headlands are higher than the middles of the fields, usually from ditch digging in the past, so there's usually a bit of work to do to reduce the edges where there's any ditches or tracks that have been dug. Is usually the dig out of the formation of the tracks. Usually the soil's just spread quite close by, and that acts as kind of a barrier of the water entering the water courses. So it's quite important to go around with the scraper and clear off those verges and make sure that the level of the field seamlessly rolls into the ditch. So this field took about 2.5 days. Maximum cut of 170 mil. That was mainly just across along the edge where there was the track, which I was just talking about. The image in the bottom right, you can kind of see that grade is sat on grade there, and that's filling probably one of the lowest spots in the field. We tend to find that ponding areas are worse in flatter fields. Fields that have got generally rolling gradients the water tends to find a way out, whereas if you've got a relatively flat field to begin with and a ponding area in the middle, they sit as kind of almost shallow swales, and the water finds it very difficult to leave the side. So this is the outcome. Well, this is the outcome. So this is what the site looked like once we'd finished. The client's feedback for this was that there's a reduction in ponding areas, increased irrigation efficiency, more plant even growth. So they're producing salads, but maybe if you had like a salad potato grower, it's very important that consistency of size of crop, makes a big difference when it comes to value. So they very much want a consistent, even size of crop, and water infiltration can make quite a difference to spuds and root crops. Overall improved soil structure, and a reduction in disease in the low areas that tend to sit wet. So thank you for listening, thank you for having us here today. If anyone else has any questions, or we are on the stand just back here with Mastenbroek, so if you want to come and have a chat or have a look, yeah, we're more than happy to answer any questions.